Well, I hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit about Hinduism and Buddhism, the great religious traditions of the East. We'll come back to the East in the next few weeks and look at a few more traditions later in our course, particularly Sikhism, which also grows out of Hinduism, and Confucianism and Taoism, which are common in China. But I want to reflect just a moment on an idea that I think comes up when you put Hinduism and Buddhism beside of each other, even though they are sister religions. They're very different. Hinduism, as you've seen, is filled with an enormous variety of practices, of philosophies, of paths to salvation. There are millions of gods, it's sometimes said, even if they all point to one ultimate reality. It's a country of 1 billion people, and it is typically associated with this dynamism and is jam-packed with, again, colors and sounds and smells. That's a picture of Hinduism in India. Buddhism, on the other hand, is maybe the picture is of the lone monk in the temple in the mountains, someone who is solitary, something very minimalist. And this reflects two different approaches to reality, or what we might say is the divine. In Hinduism, lots and lots of gods, embodied in all sorts of ways, as human beings, as kings, as peasants, as monkeys, as monsters. Anything, potentially, can be the form a god takes. And gods are everywhere. On the other hand, Buddhism is a non-theistic tradition. It says, no, there is no God. We're actually trying to get away from those ideas about God. Those ideas about God lead to desire, craving, suffering. And we want to let go of all of these things so that we can be free. Now, you actually see something of this tension within Christianity as well. It's sometimes called the cataphatic tradition and the apophatic tradition. These are fancy Greek words. All that means is cataphatic is we say lots and lots of things about God. So the Bible has so many images of God. Sometimes the Bible describes God as a king or a father or a shepherd, occasionally using feminine imagery of God as a mother even. Not often, but sometimes. God is a rock. God is a fortress. All these images for God, and they're not compatible with each other. God can't be both a father and a mother. God can't be both a king and a shepherd. But each of these images helps us get at some part of God. We're humans and we need these very concrete images to understand things about God. He guides us like a shepherd. He rules over us like a king. He is supportive like a father. He's nurturing like a mother. But Scripture also recognizes that God's not actually any of these things. God's not literally a rock or a shepherd or a king. God is somehow beyond all of the images that we use. God is a reality beyond our language and beyond our concepts and categories. And this gets at that second path, which is sometimes called the negative way or the apophatic tradition. And you often find it within Christian mysticism. And what it says is, as we grow more mature in our faith, we realize that these aren't literal images of God. And we seek God not in these stories, but we seek God beyond the stories. And the common image is Moses going up the mountain in the book of Exodus. And as Moses goes up to the mountain, he's getting closer to God, but it's actually getting darker and darker as he approaches God. He is leaving behind the images. He's leaving behind everything else. So I think in Hinduism and Buddhism, you can kind of see that dichotomy. The Buddhist tradition would be apophatic. We need to get away from all these images. We need to escape so that we can have this pure image of reality beyond images. And in Hinduism, they say, well, that's impossible. We're humans. We can't ever get out of our language. God actually made us in language. And so in Hinduism, we see just bring them on, pile them up. And the effect is actually the same. Because when you have so many images of God, you can't help but understand, oh, God's not actually any one of these things. Because it's impossible for God to be all of these things at once. So even though these are two very different paths with two very different sets of practices, you kind of end up at the same conclusion, which is God is beyond our wildest imagination. God is beyond our language. God is beyond our categories. God is always greater.